back again, bringing us all together in a huge collective to question what's happening, there is going to be no sustainability and there's going to be no development. We'll develop for China, we'll develop for people who invest money in India, and so far as we are concerned, we are going to go back many, many years. So I'm really very worried about our silence. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
No,
Yes, Rajni.
my turn? Oh, thank you, Ashish.
Keep it a little shorter.
Yes, yes.
Because we want to have
I know
a
you're
good
short of
discussion.
time. Yes, yes. So firstly, thank you very much, Chandrika, and the whole team here at SP Jain for inviting me, and it's really quite an overwhelming honor to be on the same platform as such old friends. You know, yesterday this competition as a phenomenon came up a lot, and I thought that since Aruna has given you the rural end of the story, I could share with you some thoughts which will relate to the world you're going to be working in. And you know, this is basically a platform for young people going into the world of business. And young people yesterday kept asking, you know, so what do we do? How do we, you know, proceed? So in a nutshell, since the topic here just now is inclusion and growth, the first question we have to ask is inclusion into what? And the common question that's always asked is inclusion for whom? But more importantly, and I think the crux of it in some sense Ashish Da outlined when he introduced the session. So I'll just maybe share two stories with you which I hope will illustrate what is at stake here. So the game of tennis, which you're all familiar with, right? We all watch Wimbledon, etc., is about throwing the ball, pitching the ball in such a way that the other person is not able to pitch it back to you. That's how you win a game of tennis. But the game of tennis originated in the villages of France in an exactly opposite way. The original rural version of the game was that you played to see how long both of you could cooperate to keep the ball in the air. That was the fun. Now what I find it very interesting that whenever I share this story with people with our background, you know, people like us who pretty much rule the world, they find it quite absurd. They say that, but then there's no game in the old version. And when I asked them why do you think there was no game in the old version, they said, well, there can't be a game if somebody doesn't lose. There has to be a loser and there has to be a winner for something to qualify as a legitimate game. So my point here to you is that, but this is not how our species has lived always. This idea, I mean, okay, there's always been marauding herds and there have been thugs and there have been, you know, people who robbed caravans when they went down the Silk Route. So greed and violence are not a new problem. But to institutionalize the idea that success means that you win when somebody loses. This is a new concept, and I think those of you who attended yesterday, I think got a sense from both what Shiv said and what Aseem said about what is the crux of modernity. Now let me illustrate from another completely different context what this has meant in India and why it is so absurd for us to, you know, want to be included into this global game. So I had the privilege in the late 80s, early 90s to be involved in the Narmada Bachao Andolan. In case some of you have not heard about it, because I think the average age of your students is maybe 21 or 22, this was a very mass-based movement against a dam. I mean, actually all the dams, but at that time it was primarily the Sardar Sarovar Dam being built on the Narmada. Now, in the 80s, the Narmada was the last major fully free-flowing river in India. Okay, it originates in the hills of Madhya Pradesh in a place called Amarkantak, and it flows through MP, Maharashtra and Gujarat into the Arabian Sea. And in some of those villages in an area called Nimad, so this is not tribal, I'm not telling, this is not tribal society. Say, because when you give people a tribal society example, they say, ha, but that doesn't apply to us, you know. Our ancestors have been accumulation based societies, so please don't give us tribal examples. Okay, fair enough. So these are your people like you and me, who had large farms, you know, big houses, surplus accumulating people. In that area, I noticed very often that I would see a sapling of neem, people, and banyan growing very, like, you know, like these 3 tables or maybe that much distance. So finally I asked someone, I said, you know, I'm seeing that this is a repeat pattern, that I keep seeing these saplings growing in such close proximity. So is this a natural ecological phenomenon of this region, or are they planted? So the people I asked this question to, they were the local villagers. They said, no, they are planted. Because they said that we believe here in our culture that if you have planted one each of these 3 trees, I assume that you all know what these trees are, right? Neem, people and bud. Okay. Now please, I hope you all know that none of these trees have a fruit that you can sell. There is no commercial value in the old, even today almost pretty much. I mean, I don't know now, somebody may have patented one of those trees. So they said that we believe that if you have planted one each of these 3 trees and raised it till it is secure. Secure means that, you know, the passing goat or the careless walker will not, you know, break it. So not its full size even. You have fulfilled your purpose in life. You have, in a sense, what in our modern parlance we would say, you have justified this carbon you're storing. Then after that you do whatever else you do in life. You earn money, you don't earn money, you have 4 sons or no sons, or, you know, you marry off your daughter using 700 crores or 70,000 rupees. All that is extra. This is the essence of a successful life. Now, when we talk about inclusive growth, are we trying to include ourselves into this mentality, this consciousness, or its opposite? That is the question that I leave before you. And it's a question that has to be processed. I'm not suggesting, you know, that there's a final answer on this. But as long as, if you know, as you go into the working life, if you are able to keep such a question alive in your mind even, then there is some scope for at least beginning to have some hope of engaging with the reality that will dominate all your lives. People who are now 20, let's hope that, you know, you're all going to live to be 80 plus. Because the world of the next 60 years is, the only thing that is guaranteed is that it is a time of great turbulence and material uncertainty. Forget all the social stuff. I'm not even going down that route of what is going to happen in terms of the growth of hatred, the growth of violence, the growth of concentration of power, the growth of unprecedented disparities. 30 years ago when liberalization began, I think India had 1 or 2 dollar billionaires. Now the figure has crossed 150, if I last remember. I think I didn't see this last year's Credit Suisse report, but it has crossed 150 dollar billionaires. What is it that we want to grow? That is one question. Do we want to grow the number of billionaires? But you know, normally the reason why, and I'll close by just sharing with you one platform on which you can also go and look at some of these issues, that when we talk about billionaires and disparities, then usually the common thing that is brought up is, oh, how to distribute the wealth, or you know, how to make sure that the wealth is earned in a way that it, you know, the surplus accumulates in a more distributed manner, even if, because we don't want to be socialists, we don't want to force, you know, Mr. 700 crores for daughter's wedding to spread that money by force to others. But I suggest to you that even that is a third or fourth order question, you know, how do you distribute? The first and most important thing is to figure out what is it that we want to grow. And in the existing model, which is only focused on material growth, it is already scientifically established that you cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet.
Yeah. I missed, what is it?
That you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet, right? And so the one thing that I would urge you all to look up is a platform called Degrowth. If you just Google for degrowth, you will find lots of links on it. And this is basically a concept that is attracting academics and activists from across the world. And it's not about recession. Okay, your recession is not my degrowth. This is one of their slogans. And also, of course, the rich must degrow so the poor can grow. But more importantly, it's a platform on which some of these more fundamental questions are being asked. That why are we trying to include people into a game that is already past its expiry date? It cannot go on. And okay, even if you forget climate change and forget the ecological story, the current world of finance and the way that money has, what now constitutes money. We don't have time to go into the history of that and what it, you know, all the, it simply cannot continue in the way that it is without repeated busts. That is part of the theory. And we were lucky last time, as Aruna pointed out, for various reasons that had been put into place, you know, checks that had been put into place by an assortment of people, including, I think, Dr. Manmohan Singh and Y.V. Reddy of the RBI. We were saved actually the worst. But the next crash is coming, and I don't know how much better, you know, insulated our country is going to be. So that crash is one aspect. The other is, and I will close with this, that it's only through a degrowth kind of mindset, or let's put it, that area in the Narmada region is called Nimad. It's only when that kind of mindset informs our concept of growth will we be able to, you know, action a different kind of architecture of what constitutes development. Because at the moment, in order to use the water of that Narmada river, we have destroyed it as a river. It's now a set of tanks. The river as a flowing water, you know, ecological system is gone. So this is the difficult question I leave you with, and I think it's worth struggling with. That can a technological civilization that cannot maximize the benefit to humans from a river without destroying the river survive? Forget grow. Thank you.
Dr. Patki.
Yes. I will hopefully get there once. I'm still Mr., but I'll get to here, hopefully to that point. But I'm delighted to be here, and I'm feeling like a drop of water in a mighty ocean, sitting amidst all of you and absorbing the, you know, it's almost like drinking from a fire hose, right? But I appreciate the learning opportunity. As we were discussing, I was trying to think of a few instances, and you know, I've been dabbling in this for the last 5-6 years, and I'm trying to look at what are those 3 or 4 instances that have shaped my thinking around this, and I'll share a few. There's this chap called Vishwanath Matti who comes from a village in Gadag, and we run a program where we take school dropouts or illiterate village youth, and through a 6-month transformation, we really transform them to be confident youngsters, English-speaking, computer literate, whatever. So Vishwanath was in Bangalore. He had got a job. He was earning about 11,000 rupees. So I was talking to him on the first day of the job and asked him, so what do you think is the most significant thing that's happened in your life the last 6 months? And I thought he's going to say, you know, I got a job, money, all that is that, and he told me an instance. He said, you know, what is the first thing I did when I finished my training or transformation program is I went to the chai shop that I used to have chai in my village. He says, before, the chai shop fellow used to treat me with a lot of disdain, disrespect. He says, hey, hogo, kutkolo, just go sit there, take whatever you want. He says, I could see the disrespect in his demeanor. He says, the first thing I did as I graduated is that I wore my shirt, tucked in my shirt, polished shoes, and I went and asked him, give me a cup of tea in English. He says he didn't recognize me. He says, sir, please sit. He wiped the table, made me sit down, and served the tea himself. He says, that respect I could never have got. And that respect I know how to command. Right? And that's what makes me live my life with a head held high. He says, all this is fine. I will figure that out. Right? But